That day, a grand gathering brought together many leaders from different beliefs. No one expected that amid the warm discussions about life and sacred teachings, a young priest in his 30s would discover something that would completely change his life. It all began when he sat down to speak with an old cleric filled with wisdom. From that conversation emerged an inner journey that shook him, calmed him, and guided him toward the greatest decision of his life. This is the full story of how a brief dialogue opened the door to the light he had long been searching for. Let us begin. At a grand event that gathered many leaders of various beliefs, stood a young priest around the age of 30. His face showed both curiosity and the inner burden he had long carried. He had studied many teachings throughout his life, yet there was always an empty space he could not explain to himself. The event was filled with warm conversations. The large hall where the meeting was held was illuminated by soft light that fell on long tables. Amidst the crowd, the priest noticed an old cleric sitting calmly. The cleric appeared like a spring undisturbed by waves. His smile was gentle, his movements slow, yet the glimmer in his eyes radiated wisdom that made anyone want to approach him. When the dialogue session among the leaders began, the participants exchanged views about moral values, peace, and the spiritual journey of humanity. The priest listened closely. He was used to speaking before many people, but this time he wanted more to listen than to speak. When the moment came, the old cleric was asked to share his perspective on the Holy Scripture he studied. With a soft yet clear voice, he explained the Scripture as a guide for life, not merely a text of laws or history. He described it as a light that penetrates and reflects the human heart, an explanation of the relationship between humans and the Creator and between humans themselves. After the session ended, the priest approached the old cleric. They sat together in a quieter corner of the hall. The priest began speaking about how he had long studied various religious writings yet always felt something incomplete. He said he wanted to understand more deeply the Scripture that the cleric had just discussed. The old cleric smiled and began explaining the structure of the Holy Scripture. He told how its verses were revealed little by little in ancient times, addressing human needs in particular moments and conditions yet remaining relevant throughout the ages. He elaborated on the meanings of patience, gratitude, and trust in the Creator with language that emphasized inner transformation rather than mere ritual obligations. He spoke of teachings that invited humans to reflect honestly on themselves, acknowledge their weaknesses, then strengthen themselves with love and devotion to the Creator. The priest listened without blinking. A stirring formed in his heart that he could hardly describe. Every word from the cleric felt like an answer to the thousands of questions that had haunted his mind. He began asking about the concept of divinity, about the relationship between revelation and reason, about the purpose of life and the final destination of humanity. The old cleric replied with serenity, never forcing, never lecturing, only inviting understanding. Their conversation went on for a long time, even as the event grew quieter. The evening light entered through the large windows and touched the priest's face. In those moments he felt a peace he had never known before. It was as if the burden he had carried for years suddenly vanished. The old cleric looked at him, and in his gaze there was no demand, only warmth and human compassion. As night began to fall and the participants slowly left the hall, the priest asked the old cleric to guide him in understanding more deeply the meaning of faith he had just heard. He admitted that his heart felt a strong calling, a calling he could no longer ignore. In that silence, he expressed his sincere intention to enter a new path in his life. There was no crowd celebrating, no praise, only the quiet night and the old cleric's gentle voice offering a prayer. Tears flowed down the priest's cheeks, not from sorrow but from immense relief. He felt as if he had finally found the home he had long sought. News of his decision spread among the event's participants. Some were surprised, some smiled, yet the priest did not think much about their reactions. He only felt the peace filling his chest. He realized that his life's journey had just begun again, heading in a direction he had never expected. The old cleric remained by his side that night, offering simple advice. that the journey of faith was not about becoming perfect but about striving to understand and improve oneself every day, that every human being has a place and time to discover the light within their heart. Thus, from that day on, the priest began his life as a follower of a new belief. He walked with a lighter heart, a more open mind, and a clearer spirit. He continued learning from the cleric and from many people he met along his new path. He was grateful for the encounter that changed his life, an encounter he never imagined would happen at a large event attended by leaders of many teachings. And within his heart was the conviction that every human has a path home, only needing the right time and the right encounter to find it. The days following the grand event became a period full of change for the former priest. He woke up every morning with the feeling that the world was opening a new page for him. Yet great changes in life never unfold smoothly. There were waves of emotion he had to face, questions from old colleagues, and an inner struggle that sometimes surfaced when he remembered the life he once lived. The old cleric continued to accompany him with great patience. Every afternoon they met in a small garden near the cleric's home. The garden was peaceful, surrounded by leafy trees and a quiet pathway rarely walked by anyone. There the former priest learned about the meaning of prayer, about the relationship between the heart and actions, and about the importance of sincerity in every step of life. One afternoon the cleric brought a small book containing explanations of the prophets of old. He described how the struggles of those chosen individuals were filled with hardship and doubt yet always ended with inner strength that grew from faith. Hearing these stories, the former priest found new courage to understand his own struggles. On certain days he felt an indescribable vibration while reading verses that he had previously only heard from afar. Now each word seemed to touch the deepest part of him. It was as if there were a bridge between his thoughts and the spiritual world he had long searched for. He often paused his reading to give his heart time to absorb the meaning. But the journey was not always beautiful. In the third week after his decision, a group of leaders from his old circle came to visit him. They asked why he had chosen another path and whether he had been influenced by anyone. Their questions were not angry but filled with bewilderment and a hint of sadness. He answered calmly that he had found the peace he had long lost. There was no coercion, no pressure, only a long search that had finally found its end. Even though he explained carefully, he felt his inner turmoil return. That night he came to the home of the old cleric. In a low voice he admitted that he feared facing such a huge change. The cleric simply patted his shoulder gently. He said that fear was a sign that a person was walking toward something meaningful. A few days later, the former priest was invited to attend a small gathering of young people. There he saw individuals from various backgrounds come together without regard to status or past. They spoke about improving themselves, about spreading goodness, and about remaining humble even when possessing the strength of knowledge. Among them, the former priest felt a genuine sense of family. Slowly, he began to take part in social activities. He helped distribute food to those in need, taught children to read, and listened to the stories of people he had never known. He realized that the teachings he was learning were not only about belief but also about benefiting others. Every step he took made his heart more certain. However, the most moving moment came on a quiet night. He sat on the porch of the cleric's home, gazing at a sky filled with stars. The cleric asked whether he felt any change in himself since the day they first met. The former priest remained silent for a long time before finally saying that he felt as if he had been reborn, not as someone perfect or more holy, but as someone who finally knew himself with honesty. The old cleric smiled, saying that every person has a unique journey, and that guidance is not an instant gift but a lifelong path. Hearing this, the former priest lowered his head, feeling a warmth flow within him. That night he looked at the stars and promised he would continue walking the path he had chosen no matter what awaited him. The journey of the former priest was far from over. It had only just begun. Yet he no longer walked alone. He carried a calmness he had never known before, a resolve to be helpful, and a gentle light that grew from sincere understanding. And in the distance, the old cleric watched him with pride, realizing that his life had intertwined with a soul that was discovering its true direction. A simple meeting at a grand event had changed two hearts at once, bringing a new story into the long flow of humanity's search for meaning. This was the long journey of a young priest who finally found peace after speaking with an old cleric filled with wisdom. This story reminds us that the search for truth is the right of every human being, and that a simple encounter can open the path to great change in life. If this story has inspired you or opened a new perspective for you, do not forget to support this channel so we can bring more meaningful stories. Thank you for watching and see you in the next content.